Hi, I'm Andy Glass with Glass Impressions. Today we're going to make a video dedicated to drawers and all their subcategories, from drawer construction to hardware to insulation jigs behind me. I wish this video was out when I was just starting woodworking, as drawers and their subcategories can be a bit daunting and intimidating, and I want to break them apart, make it easily digestible, and provide some value to those new woodworkers out there. Now, if you're an experienced woodworker, maybe there's a tip or trick in here that I might share that you might not know and provide some value to as well. In addition to that, I might not cover everything, as I am trying to focus on the most popular aspects of drawers, the hardware, various things like that. So maybe there's something that you can comment below and provide a little bit more talking points to this discussion. So without further ado, I hope you guys enjoy. A little disclaimer here, I'm only focusing on the major types of hardware, drawer construction, installation jigs. I want to make this video easily digestible and not get too confusing or too wrapped up in so many options out there. So I have a rough outline of what we want to talk about today. No hardcore script, so we're just going to be kind of off the cuff here, and we're going to go to the hardware selection right away. And we'll start out with a simple chunk of wood, glued and screwed or nailed to the side of your drawer with an existing dado or maybe another cleat in the casework of your cabinet or space that drawer glides on that piece of hardwood. It's extremely simple. It's very cheap. You can make it out of scrap wood. They can hold a lot of weight. There's obviously no adjustability as you are gluing and screwing it to your case, but it is something that I've had in my shop for many, many years. And they have their intended purpose. I have since graduated to some actual hardware pieces in my shop, but they did their intended purpose at the time and don't regret any of those. Next is the Epoxy drawer slide. Simple installation, compatible with almost any drawer box construction type and material thickness. They are extremely affordable. Typically 3/4 extension, and the adjustability is minimal with these. These do typically come factory with self-closing, which means that there's a ramp on the back here that as the epoxy slide gets to the back, it then hits that angled area and self-closes the drawer and keeps it closed. So kind of a built-in feature that's pretty nice, typically pretty standard with your epoxy slides. The epoxy drawer slides do have a rear bracket. Basically, those are for your face frame type kitchens, to where when you have a face frame, the side of the cabinet and the face frame don't match up. So either you have to fill that with a filler piece, or you use a rear bracket to mount it straight to the back of the cabinet. Next, we'll move to the side mount drawer slide. These, when I was just starting out, were the dream. I wanted every drawer in my shop to have these nice and smooth, ball bearing, straightforward installation, compatible with almost any drawer box construction type. They just simply attach to the side of your drawer box. They come in multiple options. You can just get a regular drawer slide. You can get stay closed, which basically means once you get it to a certain point, just like the epoxy, they actually will keep the drawer closed. And then you also can get the popular soft close. Tolerance when you're building your drawer in your opening, and the drawer, the soft close mechanism can kind of be a little bit finicky. So I have tended to graduate to the Undermount slides, which we can get to here in a little bit. Just like the epoxy slides, the side mount slides also have a rear mounting bracket. Looks like this. It simply just slides into the unit and then mounts to the back of the case. Same application for face frame cabinets to avoid the filler piece. The side mount slides have a little bit of degree of adjustability, and the part that goes along your cabinet has horizontal slots, allows you to adjust the drawer front or back, or where these actually mount to the side. The part that attaches to the drawer box has vertical slots, and that allows you to adjust the box up and down. So it definitely provides way more adjustability than the epoxy, as the epoxy has zero adjustability, but is kind of in the middle of the road when you look and compare it to the Undermount slides. Taking a look at the Undermount drawer slides, this particular one that I have in my hand is the Bloom Tandem. It is the Cadillac of Undermount slides, just due to its construction, its reputation, its durability, and then also its adjustability. If we stick along the kind of talking points of these drawer slides, they're a little bit more complicated. I kind of throw them in that category just due to the specific drawer construction method that you have to do, which we'll talk about that a little bit later. You can only use 5/8 or 1/2 inch material when you use these particular Undermount slides, which is pretty standard in the industry. Cost-wise, they are more expensive, but you can get that toned down with other brands that provide a little bit of less adjustability. That gets you closer to the side mount price point. Now, some side mount, kind of kicking back to that, some side mount price points can get pretty high that actually make the Undermounts look pretty competitive. The standard options for these is pretty much typically soft close, full opening, or even over travel as far as the extension. I mentioned a little bit about the adjustability. One thing that I find just kind of essential with these is the tolerance. When you compare it to the epoxy and the side mount, you get a pretty wide tolerance, and you don't have to be super spot on with your dimensions. And then above and beyond the epoxy and the side mount is these are Undermounts, so they're hidden. When you pull out your drawer, you're not going to see anything on the side. I have my logo get laser engraved on my drawers, and it provides a nice, clean, classy look. The only extra bit of hardware that goes with the Undermount slides that the side mount and epoxies don't have is what these called are drawer clips. Basically, that's how they attach the hardware to the bottom of the drawer, and it clicks in there, and then you can buy various degrees of adjustability. This is the standard one. It has side-to-side adjustability and then also up and down, which if you're doing inset drawers is an absolute must. But you also can get standard ones that have a little bit of less adjustability, which obviously come with a much more affordable price point. The drawer construction segment here is going to be very simple. We're going to first touch base on material selection. You can really use anything you want to make your drawers. Sheet goods, MDF, plywood, melamine, anything you can find that meets your needs as far as affordability, durability. This particular drawer that you see here has a maple drawer box with a 1/4 inch plywood bottom. Again, you can use hardwoods, you can use maple, birch, anything you want. You can use multiple species to get fancy if you're going to do dovetails or whatever. And then let's dive into a little bit on the joint selection. You can, again, do anything you want, from a simple butt joint, dovetails, rabbets, box joints, sliding dovetails, pegged butt joints. You can do, really the sky's the limit. Focusing on the beginner here, I would really just focus on, if you're making some shop drawers or something to start out, or maybe pick something cheap and just make a couple drawers of varying sizes just to practice. But I would start out with a butt joint. Simple, strong connection with screws, glue, maybe some brads, and that'll get you by to start. Then you can maybe move. I went from butt joints to probably box joints with the Incra iBox jig. Extremely simple, self-explanatory. Their directions are great, but that maybe takes your simple drawers to the next level. And then obviously your dovetail joints are your Cadillac of joints as far as a drawer, and that's because it has a mechanical. The dovetail geometry has a mechanical nature so that drawer doesn't pull itself apart. The angled portions of the dovetail actually hold on to the drawer front, and it makes it a very, very durable, long-lasting joint. When we talk about the epoxy slides and the side mounting slides, there's really no limitations when you are looking at your drawer construction. Basically, you can use any material thickness that you want. You can plant your drawer bottom on the bottom, or you can put it in a groove. There's really no right or wrong way to do it. They have a lot of flexibility when it comes to those two drawer slides. But when we look at an Undermount slide, there is firm drawer construction limitations that you must follow in order for them to work. You have to have your drawer bottom be a 1/2 inch away from the bottom of your drawer. Now I'm overlaying some pictures here to kind of explain that, but basically what that's allowing it to do is sit underneath your drawer. In addition to the bottom spacing, you also need to have a notch cut out on the back and then a hole drilled for a little tab on the back of the drawer slide. What that tab does is it registers in that hole and doesn't allow the drawer to tip forward as you're maybe loading it or lifting it or pulling it out. Now the front of the drawer attaches to the clips as we talked about earlier, and then that back tab keeps the back nice in position. Let's talk a little bit about the size of your drawer in relation to the opening that you have in your cabinet. That is going to be clearly dictated by the hardware that you select. You should have instructions that are included in your manufacturer's packaging that clearly depicts what spacing you need for the hardware. Typically, you're going to need a 1/2 inch spacing on each side of the drawer for side-mounted drawer slides, pretty much similar for the epoxy, and then the side mount can be a little bit different depending on what you're doing and what particular ones you're using. So the only advice that I can put there is look at the direction or select the hardware that you're going to pick before you do your project, before you select your material, before you cut any parts, and know the spacing between your drawer and your drawer opening needs to be, and so you can make your drawer account for that. So you have your carcass or your cabinet made, you've selected your hardware, you've made your drawer to the hardware specs, and now it's time to install. We're going to go ahead and take a peek at each individual drawer slide along with some different installation jigs. The technique is basically the same, but maybe there's a little bit of nuances between the types of hardware, and we'll cover as we go. Let's talk a little bit about installation jigs and which one I prefer for a different type of slide. Now, the three I have here are my personal preference in the industry. There are probably hundreds of different varying jigs, maybe the same, that are rebranded by different companies, but these are the three that I have in my shop that I use from time to time. And we'll start out with the Rockler Universal Drawer Slide Jig. It can hold everything from epoxy to side mount, but this thing has a whole lot of different capabilities that I probably underutilize. But this is the one I specifically use for my epoxy slides. It has the perfect geometry where it avoids and can deal with the curvy shapes of the epoxy slides, which you'll find out here in the future video that it's a little bit cumbersome, but it would be an absolute nightmare without this jig. Moving along, these are from Craig. They're little support brackets that get clamped onto the face frame on the inside that give you a nice level and square to your face frame. And there is a left and right. It has some doodads on it that allow you different setbacks and offsets. I probably use these underutilize these as well, but these are my go-to for side mounts and under mounts. It is just extremely simple when dealing with face frames. We can move along to the Tower drawer slide jig, installation jig from FastCap. Basically, you set these little supports to the varying heights that you need for the drawer slides, and then you quickly can screw them in place. I tend to gravitate towards this when I have multiple slides and it's very repetitive. I can set them all in one level, screw them in place, and you're good to go. Well, there's a quick look at the installation jigs that I use in my shop. Let me know below if you guys have any jigs or tips or tricks in the installation side of things that will be educational for someone that's new to the woodworking scene. Let's go ahead now and move to installing the actual drawer slides in the little fake cabinets here that I have built. Time to pay the bills. Sponsors like Skillshare make it possible for content creators like me to keep producing enjoyable and valuable content for all. What is Skillshare, you ask? Skillshare is an online learning community where millions come together to take the next step in their creative journey. With thousands of inspiring classes for creative and curious people on topics including illustration, design, photography, video, freelance, and more. Skillshare classes include a combination of video lessons and class projects. With so many topics, Skillshare has classes to fit your schedule and skill level. I have recently jumped on Skillshare and cruised the vast subjects and classes and fell in love with various subjects that I've wanted to take the next step in. With a strong desire to increase my content output and video quality in 2020, I highly recommend the class DIY Cinematography with Ryan Booth. His simple instruction and easy to follow classes are giving me the ideas and tools to bring my content to the next level. Check out the link in the description to get your 2 free months of premium membership and explore your creativity. Thank you Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Now back to the action.
All right, we're going to start out with the epoxy drawer slides. We're going to use the universal Rockler drawer slide jig. Very simple to use. Put the drawer slide in position, use the black lever tab and wedge it in position. Place the jig up against the face frame and then use some sort of clamp. I like these auto adjusting Craig clamps, and I use a self-centering bit on the front face frame hole, drive a single screw, and then I focus on the back. Now the back can be a little tricky with the jig in place, so what I'd like to do is just kind of average it out in the adjustment holes and then make my adjustments at the end. One thing I didn't show initially there was putting on that back bracket. That is optional, but with face frames it speeds things up quite a bit. Here we're going to move to the other side of the cabinet. Again, put the drawer slide in the universal drawer slide jig, clamp it to the face frame, use the self-centering drill bit, drive that screw into the face frame there on the front. And then here's a little wedge I made. It is the same distance between the inside edge of the face frame and then the outside of the cabinet, and that just keeps that drawer slide nice and parallel. Now if you notice that rear bracket is a little goofy, and that was done intentionally here. We're going to walk through kind of fine-tuning this at a later date. Moving on to the drawer itself, use the matching hardware for the drawer, align it to the front edge of the drawer, and then use the screws and mount them to the side of the cabinet. Pro tip, use a self-centering drill bit here as well, just to prevent those sides from splitting, especially if your drawer slide has rabbets, as that is a weak point right there. Give your drawer a test fit. This particular one here just does not work very well due to where I left the rear brackets here. Get a handheld Phillips screwdriver, make your adjustments parallel, up and down, vertically, in and out, and just keep testing that drawer until you get the smooth movement that you'd like and expect. Here you get a good look at the self-closing feature of these epoxy drawer slides. Very simple, yet effective. Moving on to the side mount full extension soft close drawer slides, we're going to switch jigs here to the Craig brackets. We're going to clamp that to the face frame, and then without a jig we're going to rest the drawer slides right on top of the Craig brackets. I'm going to use my spacer again, and then I'm going to position the drawer slide back from the front edge of the face frame or the front of the cabinet. I'm going to use that self-centering drill bit again and drive some pan head screws into that face frame, and then move my spacer back and then drive some screws into those rear brackets. These Craig brackets get in the way again, just kind of like any other jig will do. Align those rear brackets up as much as you can, but just like the epoxy ones, you can go back and adjust them at the end. Here's a pro tip. I like to use a marking gauge to make a center line for the hardware that attaches to the drawer side. Just basically put your tip of your screw right in that marking line, and your hardware is going to be perfectly parallel with the bottom edge of your drawer. Now if you don't want to do this technique, you can always clamp it in place and use a self-centering drill bit as well. Now insert your drawer for the first time. It's always going to be a little bit difficult getting all the ball bearings aligned and in the same motion, but after you pull it out that first time, it should be nice and smooth. Now this particular install actually went very, very well. Minimal adjustments to those rear brackets needed, but here is a nice close-up of that self-closing soft close feature of these particular drawer slides that work very, very nicely. Okay, moving on to the Undermount full extension drawer slides with soft close. We're going to start out by mounting the 2 clips to the underside of the drawer, 2 screws apiece, extremely simple. Then we're going to use the same technique as we used with the side mounts, using the Craig bracket, clamping it to the face frame, driving a couple screws in the face frame itself, using our spacer, and then putting a couple screws in the rear brackets. These particular undermounts require a 3/16 inch setback, and that basically allows the drawer to fully close and minimize the gap that once that drawer is actually closed, the drawer front won't stick out and have a gap in between the drawer front and the face frame. Now, when you push it in that first time, it typically should click. If it doesn't, you're going to have to manually grab the drawer slides and then connect them to the clip. But I absolutely love how smooth this mechanism is on the undermount slides, and the soft close feature is just absolutely effortless.
Well, after getting a little bit dirty, we have all 3 drawer slides installed, and I can say without a doubt the winner is the undermount slide. It is the Cadillac of slides. The motion and the soft close is extremely smooth and is a step above the side mount slides. You just don't have that tolerance issue you do with the side mount that can at times interfere with the smoothness and the soft close feature of the side mount slides. And also it should be noted that the undermount and side mount offer 100% real estate of your drawer, whereas the epoxy only got 3/4 extension, so you lose that last little bit of your drawer, which can be pretty important depending on where you're at, what you're putting in. It just makes grabbing things out of that drawer a little bit more difficult. Installing the drawer slides, I would say the side mount and the undermounts are probably tied. Maybe the undermounts are a little bit easier as it has that L shape and can sit in the corner of your face frame and just make either clamping it in place, pre-drilling, driving your screws just a little bit easier. I find that the epoxy slides are incredibly finicky, cumbersome to install, even with the Rockler universal drawer slide jig. I don't get the results that I can with the side mount and the undermount. I find in my current stage of woodworking, the increased cost going from the epoxy either to the side mount or the undermount is absolutely well worth it. With the epoxy slides, you don't get that adjustability you do with the side mount and undermount, and maybe that is what's getting me with the results that I want, or maybe I'm just so biased to the side mount and undermount that anything below that is just not worth my time to do. You can adjust a little bit with the rear brackets with all 3, and which can be necessary from time to time, but the clear winner kind of in the tolerance category would be the undermount. You don't have to have things super perfect when compared to the epoxy and the side mount. Your case can be a hair out of square, your drawer can be a hair out of square. Just the nature of the undermount can compensate for that. You can adjust to it and still get the absolute perfect results that you're looking for. Let me know below what drawer slides you use in your shop. Have you tried all 3? What is your opinion on them? Hopefully you got a tip or trick here and there from this video. If you have something that can bring some light to the conversation and discussion, please leave that below as well. I think the more conversation we bring to the community, the better about topics like this that new woodworkers find a little bit daunting. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and click that bell for future notifications. Big thanks for Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.